All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Business of Speaking show. I am your host, Tim McDonald, and joined today with my special guest, Clare Kumar. How are you, Claire?
Really well, thanks, Tim.
Well, good. It's so great to have you here and everybody watching. And if it's your first time watching the show, really what the Business of Speaking is it's a community of speakers for speakers where we don't hear about what the speakers necessarily talk about on the stage, but more about their journey to the stage and what they've learned along the way once they got on stage. So, with that, Claire, I would love to have you kind of tell us your story of how you got started speaking.
So it's made me think about it actually, because I think the first time I gave a talk was when I was still a corporate employee. And I noticed that people were having carpal tunnel issues and sore backs and so on. And I thought, man, we can do something about this by just educating people a little bit. So I put together a presentation on ergonomics for the office because the company I'd been at previously was very, very good in terms of taking care of people in that respect. And that was my, oh gosh, this is mid 90s, I think. That was my first, I'm going to give a talk there. And then it grew really largely. I mean, I always did presentations at work. So you got comfortable making a case and informing people in my corporate career. And then when I started my own business, really it was to, first of all, market the business that I started to give talks. And then it became a revenue or profit center in the business, giving talks, workshops, keynotes, and so on, training people, and then expanding into media and live television. So a lot of I think I like the energy of performing. And so when I realized how much I enjoyed it, I just kept, trying to create more opportunities to do that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've never heard anybody to say like I knew I wanted to be a speaker at the beginning.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of curious, because I think there's different, at least for me, different types of feelings when you're just doing it at a company, doing it, for free, but then like when you start getting paid and getting up on stage, right, in front of people, was it different for you? Did you have a different feeling, or am I alone in thinking that?
I think maybe the pay was so small at the beginning. Like, I'm not kidding. I started to go out so I used to be, a lot of my time was spent organizing people in their homes. So the Marie Kondo of Canada, if you will. And so I was, first of all, pitching to speak to moms groups and they don't pay. And so I said, no, you need to give me $50 an hour and I'll come out and give a talk because I wanted to build up paid speaking opportunities so I could become a member of CAPS. And so I wanted there to be some value transaction. And so of course it's grown exponentially since then, but it was so small. I never felt that I couldn't meet the $50 of value that they paid for, put it that way.
So do you remember the first big paycheck you got? Was that different?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. It probably went pretty gradually to 500, then 1,500, and then 3,000, and 5,000, and on
So
from
you
there.
so you never really had that shock of, oh my gosh, I'm getting this much and
I
now I need to deliver on this.
Not really, no. And even when I was doing some guest hosting work on the shopping television, for example, it was still based on a per show price, which was reasonable, even though the day got to be quite lucrative. It still made I think the value exchange always made sense to me. So I've never been offered a sum that I'm like, I don't know if I can meet that. So maybe that's my growth opportunity.
No, it's just interesting because usually I've like everybody I've talked to has
Mm.
had some point where they were just like, yes, it was so much different, but it's kind of interesting that yours has been so gradual and natural for you
Mm.
that you didn't have to experience that.
And maybe nice and slow. I don't know. But yeah, yeah.
So how long did it really take you to, get to the point that you felt you were ready to be out on your own and doing your own business as opposed to working for somebody else?
Well, I started part-time my business in 2005 when my kids were really small. They were 3 and 5 years old. And I was on my second maternity leave. And I knew a couple of things. I knew that the construct of the corporate work schedule was quite onerous for me, including commuting and child management and the job itself in a corporate culture that was very much, wearing the all-nighters like a badge on your sleeve. There was an overwork was a merited, appreciated kind of contribution. And that didn't sit well with me. So in addition to that, I knew I wanted greater fulfillment. So I started exploring that on my second maternity leave. Didn't have the courage to leave, and actually I had a move from Montreal to Toronto, kept my foot in the corporate door, took a job for a year. And after that year, it was really clear that I didn't fit what was being asked of me or the environment in which I had to work. And the fulfillment, I wasn't looking up and seeing jobs I wanted because I didn't see the right work-life integration possible for me. And so that led me to I have to go out on my own now. And so it was 2008, which is probably not the wisest time to have decided to take the plunge. But it was 2008 that I went all in on being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And, looking back at, where you are now
Mhm.
and where you were when you started in 2008, what piece of advice would you go back and give yourself, or what would you change if you went back in time to when you started?
That's a good question because I think it pertains to different things that could have been better. But one thing I think I could have done better is looking for mentors and people more experienced than me. And I do it now, but I didn't do it then, to reach out to them for guidance and learning from their trials, if you will, things that worked and things that didn't work, so that I could leapfrog my learning and not have to make all the mistakes by myself.
So really, you bring up something interesting, because I think it's really what I was finding, and why I started this is because I was having private conversations with other speakers
Mhm.
exactly for that same purpose, and then wanting to share it with the world because there's so much good information. Why just keep it for myself and between that
Mhm.
one other person? I'm just wondering, what are some of the values that you've gotten through these mentorships, that have really helped you?
I think one conversation that comes to mind is from a speaker who's on stages all over the world and was in Toronto and said, "Who's in town?" from a group that we're in, and I said, "I'm in. I can meet you for dinner." I had, a 2 hour plus dinner with this gentleman, and I learned a lot about sort of defining where I wanted to go. And I think his one of his recommendations, and there were many, one was you don't buy the shirt that you're planning to wear, you buy the t-shirt for the where you're what you're going to grow into, assuming you're a child still growing, right? And I thought that's interesting. So I have to position and create the house. If I'm a snail and I'm upgrading to the next size shell, I've got to create the environment that I'm going to step into if I'm ever going to get there. So not a fake it till you make it approach really, but a real belief in curation of the environment and the what you're putting out so you can attract and then evolve into that.
Yeah. And as you're saying this, and you're bringing me back to when you were talking about how it's been such a natural, smooth, progression for you as far as the
Mhm.
stages and the pay that you've gotten.
Mhm.
Um, have you ever been at a point where you were just like, not knowing if you were ready for that next shell?
Oh, I think that's like a constant. It's a constant state of, for me, even if I've got a full day training coming up and I've done it before, I might not have done it so recently that I'm always saying, will I have enough? Will I be able to deliver enough? And I think that there's an adrenaline in that helps me keep me on my game and performing well. So I think there's something inherent in the thinking like that that keeps me motivated to do a good job. A little of good pressure, good stress, if you will.
I like that. And so, with your business now,
Mhm.
I know you said it went from, a lot more towards the speaking side,
Mhm.
compared to when it was the beginning. What other facets of, the business model for you do you have outside of just, getting up on stage and talking?
Well, the media piece has become a consistent profit center in the business. So I work with brands to really help them take their key messages, and my marketing background helps because I can talk key messages, and I turn them into compelling sound bites. And so I don't know why, I love the energy of live television. Give me 5 minutes. My first TV experience actually was a 9-minute segment. It was live to tape, but there was no redo or anything. So it was a 9-minute segment, national television in Canada. And I realized I liked it. Now I had to go and take a big 2 or 3 hour nap after the first time. And now I can do it. And I don't have that same kind of tax from a hormone point of view, but I love it. And so that has become an opportunity. Now I work with a publicist and we pitch segments where I use that to keep my position in the industry as an expert on productivity, organization, work-life integration. Those are the three areas I like to talk about. And then I work with pretty incredible brands to get their messages out. And then I get compensated for building my own brand at the same time, which seems like a good business model to me because it's fun. So I love it. And I was able to do last week, I did a media tour from here with 6 cities around Canada. And I did it from my desk and with some B-roll edited in. So there's always an opportunity to be creative in it, and a bit of a challenge in a tight time frame to hit key messages in a really compelling way for the viewer. So the speaking is kind of wrapped up in there, but in a really different way than probably most speakers.
Oh yeah, yeah, no. And have you found, I mean, now with with COVID and everything, kind of keeping us at home, I know
Mhm.
you talk a lot about the work-life integration
Yeah.
and being able, and you actually have, I know because we've met before about the remote tools for workforces.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just kind of curious, has it really impacted your business, or have you had to make adjustments to it? And are you looking at this as a positive or a negative, and how we're moving forward through it?
Oh, it's a great question. Definitely affected things. There were a lot in the pipeline that were negotiating or booked, and we weren't going to be able to meet in person anymore. What I like about it is we have now figured out that we can be really effective virtually. We can have fantastic communication. I think it's the hours and hours and hours I used to do on conference calls and telecommunications that helped my skill in facilitating groups and so on. So I can draw on that and put it into play now with a Zoom meeting and breakout rooms and so on. And so I've had some success creating new opportunities and new content actually for, how do we sustain performance in uncertain times, and looking now to start a group coaching program around that. So to bring all the knowledge, but in a way that can help people. And I love that there's no geographic boundary now. So I'm just landed a new client in the States, and traditionally my business has been predominantly in Canada, but I look at it as no borders now. So if what I have resonates, then there's no reason we can't connect.
No, I love that. I've been a big believer in that, but I think it really opens up your eyes when you almost are forced into it as opposed to having to choose it.
100%. Like a lot of my companies will say, no, I still want you in the office to coach somebody individually in person. And, in Toronto where I live, that's easily a 1 hour meeting is now half a day because of the travel on either side. So I would have minimum 3 hour commitments, which is then all of a sudden puts a constraint. Well, now I can have hour by hour if I need to, or whatever we decide is going to work. So it's freeing. At the same time, there's the sense that now I'm competing with the world. Every productivity catalyst out there is somebody I'm potentially in competition with. But I think this work also gives this media, if you will, gives an intimacy that that is wonderful. So if you can really portray well on camera and you've had a lot of experience or you hone those skills, your ability to connect one-on-one or in small groups is really profound in this. And there's not really a lot lost.
Yeah, you said something pretty interesting that I just hope maybe you indulge me and dive into a little bit more about this whole essence of, kind of all the other productivity experts out there.
Mhm.
And what I hear is you're almost like comparing yourself compared to all the other people that are in the same sphere as you. How much of a role does that play into where you go, what type of work you try and get, and do you feel like that's something that is a constant for you, or is it just something that happens when you're kind of taking that next step or exploring new boundaries that you haven't been to before?
I think it's really critical for any business to be able to articulate how they differentiate themselves from, if we're looking at cars, what's special about this car versus that car? And there's a lot wrapped up in the features and benefits, but also that brand experience and what it's like to work with the dealership, what it's like, there's a lot that goes into the buying decision. So I look at how to differentiate myself. And a few years ago, did some branding work. On how to articulate that. And it's a bit of a bold step that I took, which suits my personality. But I went forward with and said, productivity plus pleasure equals performance. And so I really like to, and I really am firmly in the spot now where I like to work at the intersection of efficiency, effectiveness, and enjoyment. And it's a bit of a unexpected, wait a minute, I just want to, it's not about the hamster wheel running faster. It's about how do we sustain our energy, passion, and purpose for what we're doing, so then we can keep our performance up. And so I don't see many productivity people amplifying that in their message. And I'm kind of glad about that. It's a little different, and I think it's really important. So it's, not just different, it's very meaningful.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and I know from your past experiences and reading about them that played probably a big role in you going out on your own too.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being in the corporate world. I was the right-hand person for the vice president of marketing at the time. And I would work on one floor and she was on the floor above me. And every time I went to her floor to give her some papers or have a discussion, it was like I was walking into a morgue. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. No one was laughing. No one was like, it was so subdued, lacking energy. And I thought, oh man, we need to have some life. We need to have some humanity in here. So I've always been getting closer on my journey to, being more aware of who I am and recognizing that if I really don't hold back on expressing my personality and what I do, hence the pink wall and so on, and the colors that I just love, then I'm going to attract the people that resonate not only with the subject matter, but also that brand experience of how things are going to be delivered and that focus on enjoyment and a pleasurable experience, whether we're working through a contract or we're actually, in some live training or group coaching.
Yeah. And, I know that, we all like to experience pleasure, right? And I'm sure in your business, you try and not only teach it and share it, but also experience it yourself. Have there
Mhm.
ever been any challenging times where, you just, really felt like this isn't pleasurable at all?
Daily, there's probably something that comes up that's not an ideal situation, certainly weekly, and in different areas. I mean, it might be, I also co-invented a product and brought that to market. And some of the business transactions and negotiations around that were incredibly stressful learning opportunities, shall I say. So, you walk away with understanding the kind of people that you want to work with going forward from having perhaps not chosen well in certain situations. So there are always challenges and learning opportunities, and I try to those negative or stressful things that happen as opportunities to reflect, pause, center, get grounded again, and then figure out what do I want to carry forward from this experience. What do I want to do differently, and what did I do to contribute to the outcome, which is sometimes also uncomfortable, but that's where the learning is. And to be brave enough to step, and I call it dancing in discomfort, because we have to, there's no point believing everything has to feel good. Those moments, we get to celebrate those and truly enjoy them because we're going through ups and downs.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I know it's not just all at one level or the other level. It is those
No.
ups and downs through here. So, I just have like one last question kind of before we get to the end is, a lot of I think people think of speaking, and you've mentioned a lot of the work you do is somewhat different from other speakers. You do a lot of media, you do the on-sites, on
Mhm.
stage workshops. Um, and a lot of these are all based on like your time, right? Like you can only do so much. You can
Mhm.
only be in so many places. You can only work with so many clients. Do you
Right.
have any types of products or services that you offer that are more, passive income, where you have them up and people can just buy them at any point in time?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. One is an ebook on the first part of my productivity model, which I call productivity CPR. So it's like an intervention to really get things working for you. But C is for compass, and there's an ebook. It's inexpensive. It's on my website in the product section, and it's really on, in 2 hours working through some questions. And this is drawing on my executive coach training to help somebody on their own come up to an articulation of what's important and then start sculpting their life in a certain way. So there's that. And I just in March actually built the Work from Home Better course, which is my first online course. So I had a lot of fun doing that. So it's got some video components, short 2 to 7 minute videos, and then 6 modules. Total is 10,000 words, which takes 40 minutes to read. So it's not time intensive. And this is the first in what I call a quick fix series. So I intend to do more programs like this: quick fix on getting a better night's sleep, quick fix on finding how to move well every day, or to make great food choices. So a lot of the things that I believe in and walk the talk on, and people look to me for from a coaching perspective, I thought, well, how do I put this out in bite-sized packages? So I'm going to be making more of those as well. And just look forward to an easy way for people to get access to some of the thinking and approaches. And like I said, with the coaching questions embedded in it, get to answers that will really work well for them on their own.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. But before we get out of here, tell us, how can people find you? Where they connect with you at, Claire?
Well, I finally decided to market my own name as the brand at clarekumar.com. And I'll just show you there's Claire with no I. I joke, no third eye. So Clare Kumar is easy to find. So clarekumar.com, and you can find everything there. Reach out to me. I love to connect and meet with new people on all the social media now too. It's Clare Kumar. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for joining us. And thank you for watching, everyone. And if you're new to the show and just watching for the first time, what we do is we stop the YouTube broadcast, but I stay on with Claire and ask her one additional question. So if you want to get access to that exclusive content, you can go over to speaking.business and join our community. It doesn't cost anything, and sign up for our email list, and you will be getting the exclusive content from Claire and all of our other speakers that isn't available on YouTube. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and thank